Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome to the No Woman Left Behind show. I'm Rosie Zilinskas. Today's conversation is with Manjiri Joshi, who's going to be talking to us about various leadership styles. Manjiri earned a master's in mega project management from Oxford University and has demonstrated the financial turnaround and scaling of 3 organizations while nurturing senior leadership teams. She was honored by Virgin's founder, Sir Richard Branson, as one of 12 among 13,000 applicants selected by LinkedIn and Virgin Media to judge and mentor entrepreneurs for a £1 million fund. She is the founder of Maya Care, a charity serving the elderly while empowering the disabled, and she has published several books. Manjiri is going to share what inspirational leaders have in common. So let's take a listen. Okay, Manjiri, thank you so much for joining us all the way from England. You're about 2 hours outside of London. Manjiri, I know that you have been leading people for a really long time, very successfully. I know that people consider you very approachable, a very compassionate leader. So what is your secret or your process?
It's a great question, Rosie. And as we spoke, you've done a lot of research, so you know a lot about, the background. The process, I would say, is first to identify who to lead. Because a lot of times us leaders spend a lot of time and energy in trying to lead people who don't want to be led. So the first thing really is to take a deep breath and say, if I have 400 people in my team, or have 10 people in my team, or have 5 people in my team, do they want to be led? Do they want to go anywhere? So the most important aspect is first to spend some time with them. I don't mean a very long time, but spend a little time with them. Maybe spending the time could just be giving them a little work to do, understanding where they come from, what their motivations are, why do they want to work in the first place? Why do they come to work in the first place? What is it that they want out of life? It could be career, it could be money, it could be progress, it could just be to, pass time, it could be whatever it is. But once you understand who is it that wants to be led, who wants to go ahead, then you can come to the next process and build in your own mind or in your own organization, build your critical talent pool. Decide, these are the people who are critical. They're critical people. They may not be in critical functions. They may not be doing roles which are very, very important for the business or the charity or whatever it is you do. But they're important people because they want to be led. Once you've crossed that barrier and once you've decided this is my critical talent, this is my bunch of people who want to be led, then is the time to spend time with them. So step 3 of the process really is to have them with you in everything you do. If you're writing an email where they don't need to be there, you can copy them. If you're having a meeting where they are not really needed, but you want them to learn from that meeting, include them in. And spend a lot of time, maybe if not one-to-one, in a group, in a smaller group. So they actually learn and they decide where to go and go with you. So that's been my process for a while. It wasn't always my process, Rosie, because I have made a lot of mistakes as a person, as a professional, and especially as a leader. And this is what I have arrived at.
Sure. Now, you said a lot there. So I'm going to go back to asking you, and I know you have a very specific process. What do you do with those people that don't want to be led? Because obviously the people that do want to be led, you use your process. But what happens to those people that don't want to be led?
It's a great question. And I think all of us, when we first became leaders, we had almost everyone in the team who didn't want to be led, at least by you, maybe by other people, but definitely not by you. So once again, it goes back to the motivation. Why is it that they don't want to be led? Do they believe that they don't want to go anywhere at all? They have no ambition, or they really have nothing to contribute to the organization, but they're just there because for whatever reason they're there, they're not making a very positive contribution. Also, as leaders, sometimes we're helpless. Not always do we have full control over any situation. So that is the time to look at such a person and see, what is the contribution they can make. If they're really not motivated to work at all, and it's not about you, but they don't want to be led by anyone at all, you actually go out and ask them and have a conversation with them. What do you really want? So if they say, no, I want to work 7 hours a day or 5 hours a day, but I just want to do this much, or all I want out of it is this, then you have no option but to do the worst thing a manager or leader can do, which is micromanagement, and give them very short-term goals and short tasks and make sure they do them, and then don't really spend too much time over them. And also make them aware of the fact that if this is going to be the situation, their growth is going to be very limited in the long run, because you don't want to be held responsible for not letting them grow or ensuring they grow because they don't want to grow. So
Right.
that's reason number one. Another reason could be if somebody says that I want to be led, but I don't want to be led by you. I think you are not a good leader. Nobody would say that to you directly. Sometimes they would, but most likely they won't say directly. And when that's happening, that is really the time to spend time with them. And that's going to be your turnaround story. Because you need to, again, go back to why do they not want to be led by me? Do they believe I don't know how to do my job? Do they believe that they just don't like me? Or they believe someone else should be doing my job? Or they believe that they should be doing my job? Or they know better than me? So whatever the reason is, it's really about a conversation. And if the conversations don't help, it's just about letting them be. If you just let them be and time and again, prove yourself, just trying to do your work and everybody else's work really well, they're going to respect you and turn around and say, okay, maybe there is something to learn from this individual. And obviously, as I said in my journey, the number of times I failed, all the people who taught me a lot about leadership were these people who didn't want to be led.
Right, exactly. So I guess the point here is you are able to turn around some people that are not engaged. So the whole purpose of us having this conversation is, in my mind, is to try to lead managers that are already managing people and teach them a few ways of how to be better managers. So I think everything you said is like spot on. And I read a statistic a while back that 70% of people are not engaged in the work that they do. And I think that's what you said is critically important, to talk to them and ask them, like, what are their goals? What is it that they want to do? So I think all of that is great. So going back to your process for the people that do want to be led, because my goal is to eradicate the gender gap and to raise women up specifically through their career development. I know a lot of women sometimes hold themselves back, and they may not be aware that they're holding themselves back. Can you talk a little bit about, from your leadership experience, what are some of those things that you have seen in women specifically that hold them back in their careers?
Once again, this is really the need of the hour, Rosie. What you're trying to do is because there are so many capable women across the world, across functions, across industries, across levels of education, backgrounds, who are there, they're so out there. And it is very, very sad when they come to you and say, no, actually, I want to quit. I know I can do this, but I want to quit. And the reasons for wanting to quit are very, very rarely professional. So that's the one thing about women. One, when they want to get married, or they want to have a partner, or they want to have a child, or whatever else, women actually start preparing for this much before then they need to. It's actually quite amusing how common this is across the world. Because if you're planning to have a baby, say 2 years down the line, or a year down the line, you don't need to quit now. If you need to quit at all, you can decide then. But it's this whole social pressure of, you have such a tough job, and, these are the reasons that, you're not going to be a good mom. And so that's one. strong reason why women would quit. The other would be saying that, I don't see any growth here because I can't network like the men. I can't go out in the evenings like the men. I cannot belong to the old boys network because that one exists. Or a lot of things which women believe that they were just not meant to do. So these are some of this is real, some of this is imagined. But these are the two primary reasons I see, not being able to balance personal stuff. And the second saying, oh, this actually takes much more than I thought I would. And the third and most important is within themselves, saying maybe I'm wrong somewhere, wanting to have ambition. Maybe too much ambition is bad. Maybe wanting to do something to change the world, to go and break a barrier and do something which no person has done before is wrong. And there's a sense of guilt which comes in, maybe family responsibilities, if not family responsibilities, something else, even if people are single and leading their own lives, somewhere is that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. So these are typical reasons I have not seen too often among men, but definitely among women.
Yeah. So you said something about sometimes the situation in your life is imagined. And that is so true, because sometimes, like, I'll be having a conversation with my husband and I'll say something that I think he said, and he said, I never said anything. You just totally made that up in your head. So that actually happens quite often. And it does happen in the workforce too, right? Where you might be thinking that you don't deserve a position or you're not good enough. And those are all your limiting beliefs. So I think that's what you were talking about, is as far as like what you think about yourself matters, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that matters a lot. Now, also going back to your process, you said that when you identify somebody that wants to advance in their career, you spend time with them. And I believe somewhere I read that you call that passion osmosis. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, so that's a term. My first co-author, as you know, I've written 5 books, but my first book was co-authored with one of my mentors. His name is Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, and this book is very, very old. It was written in 2006, and we came about. We talked about the formula inspiration. In that, what is it? What is it that inspirational leaders have in common? And in the 10-point formula, the 10th and my favorite is passion. Really, because I believe passion really differentiates something which is excellent from the outstanding. Because a lot of times people do good work, they tick all the boxes and they have actually followed all the rules, but something is missing. And passion really is like falling in love. If you haven't fallen in love with your work, you're always going to hold yourself back and say, that's enough, I'm done, it's over. While if you have fallen in love with your work, when I say with your work, whatever the cause is, each one has a different dream, a different cause, and that's fine. But if you have fallen in love with your work, there is no end to what you can do. And a lot of times we find that entrepreneurs or good leaders or people who've started off on their own keep their passion to themselves. And, people say, oh, she's so passionate about this. Oh, it's all because of his passion. And unfortunately, the organization they run a lot of times dwindles and sort of, goes down in terms of where it was supposed to head after they have stopped working or moved on or done something else with their lives. While the concept of passion osmosis is such, I mean, it's the good old biology of if you take a strip of, beetroot and put it in water, after a few minutes, you'll have pink water. And that is what passion osmosis is about. When you spend time with people, the passion actually, the osmosis begins to happen. You don't even know when it's happened. And one fine day, you're surprised. And I have been, it's a very, very pleasant surprise. A lot of times when I see someone who's been in my team, who's worked with me, actually is talking about something else and saying, oh, that's me talking. It's almost me talking. And I didn't say this, but they are saying it and they are demonstrating the same passion. So that really is the last step of the process, because when that begins to happen, they don't need you. And that's the beauty of leadership, because they stop needing you, or at least they stop needing you all the time. And they actually start doing miraculous things, like in my own team. And as you know, currently I lead a team of persons with disabilities. And each of those leaders in my team, I have 15 out of the 100 persons with disabilities we have at Maya Care. Those 15 actually have been tasked with identifying and spotting talent in their own teams. And as we recruit, And then they are actually meant to transfer their passion into the other people using the same process of osmosis.
I love that. So essentially, you're teaching your team to become leaders themselves by everything that you say. It's kind of like when you realize that when you're an adult and you have children and you hear your mom's words come out of your mouth, it's kind of the same thing, right? Where you saw that your employee was using your words, and that made you realize that everything that you're doing or saying, it's sticking, it's making a difference, and it's making a difference in their lives, and they will in turn pay it forward. So that's part of what we're trying to do here, right? Like leaders like yourself and myself, I'm trying to make sure that women that come behind us know that it's really important for them to advocate. And I think the passion is huge, because there is the saying that, if you're passionate or if you love your work, you won't work a day in your life. So I think that's very true. And so I love your passion osmosis. And so I also know that or you've had a lot of bosses. I think you said you've had like 39 different bosses throughout your career, which is incredible. But the one thing that you had mentioned is you learned something from each boss. So can you talk about that?
Right. So yes, when I wrote the book Bosses of the Wild, that was 2013. And since then, I've had one more, actually a couple of more. So it's crossed 40 now. And the book actually came about because I was working in London at that time. And before that, I had worked in Delhi, in Mumbai, in Pune, different cities of India, worked in absolutely different organizations, very unlike each other. And I used to look at people at work and say, so-and-so reminds me of so-and-so. And I mean, this is so typical. They do that. And I actually started making a list and actually writing down, what's common, what's happening among them. And then the whole process, actually, it was so enjoyable because I wrote that book in a year. And I consulted with 14 animal experts. They're global animal experts, somebody who has done their PhD in female infant infertility in America, to somebody who's the American Eagle Foundation head, or to somebody who's worked with hyenas for 9 years, a German person who's worked in Tanzania with the lions and all kinds of things. So I worked with them, and it's a fun book. In some ways, it's a fun book. It's also aligned with MBTI and the various personality typing well-known frameworks that one has. So typically what has happened is that we have 10 animals, plus we have the lion and lioness, so we have 11 animals. They're mapped to each of the MBTI and other kinds of personality types, and you see each of them in the bosses. When I say it's not just my bosses, but it's from all of us when we're bosses, when we're people. And so the book actually starts with a fun test in saying, there is a typical situation of a person in a team asking for leave to a boss, and how do they respond? And in that, in those couple of pages, you're able to make out, okay, this is me, or this is someone I know, and all of that. So coming back to what I learned from each of the bosses, yes, there's a lot, and which is why the book has 11 positive animals. We've got the rabbit, we've got the hyena, we've got the peacock, all of these, lovely people. Nobody is wrong. I don't believe that anybody really is a bad boss, because there is always at least one thing, if not more, to learn from your boss. And that's what I've tried to focus on, which is why I found, with a couple of exceptions, I've actually found it quite easy to deal with a lot of, most among these 40 bosses. In fact, a lot of them were present at the 4 book events we had to launch the book, because it was fun to have them and, have a bit of them there. Because you can't, at the end of the day, say, I'm the perfect boss, but because you won't. I'm not. I definitely am not the perfect boss. And I don't think I'm going to be in this lifetime. But I've just tried my level best from all these 40 people. And the more people I meet, just to pick up the best of what they bring to the table. And, just makes you evolve in your leadership journey as you go along.
Right. And so I think you're right when you say that all bosses, I think, have a good intention, whether they're good bosses or not. I think they would ultimately want their people to succeed. But as you well know, in this day and age, bosses are busy themselves. They not only have a team to lead, but they also have a job to do because they have responsibilities that they need to do themselves. So I think a lot of times bosses don't even have the time to lead people, number one. And then the second thing is they may not know how to lead because there's just not enough hours in the day to be giving training to all these bosses. So I do love the Bosses of the Wild book because, like you said, there's all these different fun explanations of the various characters, and from each one you can actually pick out one good thing. So there is hope for you if you're a manager out there and you're struggling in leading your team. By all means, the Bosses of the Wild book is a good recommendation, but there's a ton of leadership books and courses and things like that. But I think the most important thing is for you to have a good intention on leading your team, and more than anything, learning to develop your team, because that's going to be the key for them as well. Now, I also know that you wrote a second book that's relevant to our conversation, which is The Business of Managing Emotions. A three-dimensional approach. Now, we touched on the emotions a little bit, but how is this book relevant to managing your work life?
You touched upon women leaders sometime back in our conversation, Rosie. And one of the advantages I feel for women who are leading in 2022 and beyond is the fact that demonstrating emotion is actually acceptable at the workplace. In fact, it's welcome at the workplace, which was not always the case in all industries and all workplaces. And sometimes the inability to express emotion actually makes you a bad leader. Because yes, at the end of the day, something's gone wrong in my personal life. And if I'm telling my boss that I can't make it, or I can't finish this, or I need help, and the boss is unable to express what he or she feels, it's actually a problem. Because if they say, okay, fine, let's get on with it, and I have to get on with it, I'll still do it, but I never want to work with them ever again.
Yeah.
So given this situation, this book, The Business of Managing Emotions, again, it's co-authored with someone actually who used to be in my team. So I used to be his HR head, not his boss, but his HR head many years ago. And he also lives in London. So we've written the book together. And the three-dimensional framework actually is very interesting, because we've looked upon medical science for guidance, what really happens in our brains and our bodies when we feel a particular kind of emotion. That's the medical science. Then there is a beautiful Indian concept called the Navrasa theory, which is the 9 emotional moods. So it's from the ancient Indian text, which is very, very old, centuries old, but it's used a lot in performing arts, in music, in dance, in theater, and all of that. So we pulled that in, and we got the 9 emotional moods. 4 of them are positive, 4 of them are negative, and on top you have peace. The yearning for peace, which is the emotion which balances everything. And then we looked at management science, which is my favorite science. And we looked at management science and saying, how do you manage these emotions? So if you're feeling what you're feeling medically while you're experiencing those emotions at the workplace, what are you going to do? What are the frameworks you're going to apply? What are the managerial theories or solutions you're going to apply to make sure you're there? And the conclusion really was that you need to, as a good leader, you need to walk towards peace. Your dominant emotion, and there are predominant emotions and ancillary emotions in the Navrasa theory. So that your dominant emotion at all times needs to lead towards peace. Because if it's joy, if it's love at the workplace, if it's delight, if it's humor, it's courage, all of these good ones, it's great. But then you are flowing up and down with the emotion. But if you need to lead, and typically what is leadership? When I used to work as a CEO of a company, what was leadership? I would sit in my room, one after the other. And this is something somebody in my team who told me after I left, who told me, what, we used to just walk into the room, one after the other, we would transfer our problems to you. You would solve our problem, and you go on to the next problem, and the next, and the next. So if you've had one bad meeting and a particular problem has really, gone to your core, you're not going to be able to function and solve the next problem, and the next, and the next after that. So that was a journey. In fact, we wrote this book during that time, and it changed me as a person, because I said, if I feel peace, that's the screen. Peace is the screen between me and the rest of the world. And if I'm trying to go towards peace, and of course, there are many methods one can try, because it is a very stressful time to be a leader and have a lot of responsibility. But then you're able to be fair to the next person. You're not going to transfer the anger and the emotion or the sorrow of the first one to the next and the next.
Beautiful. Okay, so I want to ask you a follow-up question. You said that one of your team members came to you and said that one person would come into your office, person after person, and you would solve their problems. Now, would you handle that differently today, meaning that if someone comes to you, you kind of point them in the right direction versus solving the problem? Or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Once again, I'll go back to motivation. By the way, Rosie, they're excellent questions. We really, it's really, really very close to what real leadership is like.
Yes.
So thanks for those. So yes, I would just go back to the motivation of the person. So there could be a few who have come and wasted your time, saying they don't really want the problem to be solved. They just want to waste your time, or they want to derail you, or they want to transfer, or they want to pretend that, they have not made a mistake. So as a good leader, one should be able to recognize that. And it's a journey again, by the time you recognize that. And Bosses of the Wild actually helps me recognize that very easily. Because once you know there is somebody who is, for example, the hyena personality, whose only aim in life is to, be in control. The female hyena personality's only aim is to be in control. So if the person is not in control, all they're going to do is try to derail you from what you're trying to achieve for the organization. Or the male hyena personality's only aim is to belong, to find a home somewhere in the organization, because nobody wants them. So they're just going to try to pretend to be the rest of the 10 personalities, and maybe you might work with them for years and not realize they're actually the hyena personalities, because these two personalities can lie very easily. And the best way to waste a leader's time is to tell them, shoot out a lie and then go and make them work on it. So these are things I would guard against. But apart from that, my process still is that if somebody comes to me with a genuine problem saying, I cannot handle this, I'm having, this is a problem, I'm stuck, or so and so said this to me. Even today, if somebody says, oh, so and so said this to me and this is all wrong, my method still remains the same. If it used to be, bring them into the same room, now it means get them on the same WhatsApp call or a Zoom call and sort this out right there. So when I say I'm solving a problem, I'm not always doing it myself. I'm helping them, or learning or teaching them how to solve it, so that the next and the next and the next, they're able to do it. Because I always say to everybody I've worked with, please make mistakes. I've just made so many mistakes in my life. If I hadn't made those mistakes, I wouldn't have learned anything. So if you're not making mistakes, you're actually not doing much. So please make mistakes, but don't make the same mistakes again.
Well, I love that you clarified. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, is that you were, by the time they come to you, they probably already made mistakes. They probably already tried to come up with a solution, and then they're stuck, and now they're coming to you and you're solving it with them. So you're not necessarily solving it for them, but you're solving it with them. And I think that's a really key distinction of leadership. Now, I know another topic that we talked about previously is that we do have those leaders, especially in higher positions, senior positions, that may be not very nice people because maybe they need to be in control or whatever. And I know that you had mentioned that has to do with their high levels of insecurity. So can we talk about that for a little bit?
Right. So actually, this is very interesting. It's bringing me back to Bosses of the Wild, Rosie, because one of the personalities, the leadership personalities, is the rabbit. And, we all love rabbits. Tell me a person who doesn't like rabbits. They're so cute, so sweet looking, and so harmless and all of that.
Yeah.
But likening the rabbit to a first-time manager, or a first-time leader, or a first-time CEO, or first-time director of a company, and there they are sitting in their glass cabins, and everybody's looking at them, and everybody's observing them and saying, "Oh, one wrong move," and let's see what they do. There they are. They're afraid. They're afraid of making mistakes. And why I'm saying I'm likening this to this rabbit is because in the animal world, the lady rabbit, the female rabbit actually can become a mom when she's just 3 months old. She herself is just 3 months old. And when she's 3 months old, she's had this litter and she doesn't know what to do with them. And in the jungle, in the wild, you've actually had instances of them eating up the babies because they simply don't know what to do. They're just so confused. They don't know what happened to them. And they eat up everything simply because somebody else could, come in and grab them. But the same mom, the same female rabbit is a very good mom afterwards. So the next litter and the next litter, she really takes care of them because by then she's not confused. So I would just liken this to first time leaders, where everybody, and you will find this a lot with first time leaders saying, oh, I don't want to delegate because then why am I the leader? What am I doing if my team is doing this? So once, people get rid of that, they're going to be fine. But as you said, it's sometimes you find it, rarely do you find it. But if you find this in senior leadership, something is wrong. You do find this very often among young managers, but not later. So the other reasons really at top management, nasty behavior could simply be, again, one more personality, which is the eagle personality. The eagle personality who is very high on integrity, very low on emotional quotient. They do need a copy of the emotions book because they're not able to understand that empathy is critical to leadership, because they just do their own thing, say their own thing. Even if they're right, they would say it in the wrong way. And if you say things in the wrong way and the team is not with you, they're not going to do it for you. Or they might just do it, but never do it later. So this is another. And the third, I just mentioned the hyena personality, the truly nasty people. But at the same time, the female hyenas actually very good leaders. Because if they have a team that listens to them, they can achieve outstanding things in their life. I mean, you see it in the animal world as well, because that's one place where the hyenas, the hyena clans have the queen at the top, the males at the bottom, the queen is at the top, followed by the queen's daughter and the other, female relatives, and then there. But they actually achieve outstanding stuff because nobody, not a single person in their team will dare to go against whatever they're saying. Now, that's not a form of leadership I'm a fan of, really, but it works to some people. So be it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I loved everything that you said, especially encouraging your team to make a mistake. And also, when someone does make a mistake as a leader, if you don't have that empathy, then you're not going to be able to teach them that it's okay to come to you when they make a mistake, because if you bite their head off, they're not going to want to come to you when they're making a mistakes. And then you just damage the whole situation even further. To me, anytime that I either made a mistake or that someone under me or, whoever made a mistake, okay, let's just get it corrected and learn from the mistake. And then let's not do that again. So it's a little bit of, obviously we're all humans and we make mistakes. So I like the way you actually manage that. So one other thing that I just want to bring back to full circle is compassion. Compassion to people. And I know, again, I read that you have a lot of compassion just for your team. You obviously lead a team with disabilities, and that you have to have a specific set of skills to be able to lead people with disabilities, because obviously they're having challenges, more challenges than, someone without a disability. So how would you say someone that is struggling as a manager right now to try to connect with their people, how would you suggest that they summon that compassion within them to be able to help others?
Once again, a great question. And I get asked this a lot of times. In fact, recently, my old teams, teams I used to lead in the past, leadership teams, somebody from that team asked me that, oh, you now have a leadership team of persons with disabilities. And so do you treat them differently? Or do you treat them just the way you treated us? So the answer to that is that we, as I said, hired 400 persons with disabilities this year, in the year gone by, out of which 100 are in the organization. The rest went through the process I described called self-selection. That are you really interested in yourself? If you're not interested in yourself, there's not much I can do to help you. When I say yourself, your own career, your own growth, all of that. But if you are interested in yourself, your disability actually makes no difference to me, because you're interested in yourself. You're going to listen to everything else being said. Coming back to the leaders, so out of these 100, we've identified 30 people as critical talent. And when I say we have identified, they have identified themselves, because they've consistently worked and been through, difficult periods of their own life, but still continue to work, continue to learn, continue to give what they try to do. We're making a lot of mistakes, but like we said, they do. Out of these, 15 are our emerging leaders, and I spend a lot of time with them. I spend a lot more time with them than with most other people in my life right now. And my answer to this person, when she asked me that, do you treat them like ourselves? I said, yes, because these 15 have chosen to be leaders. We did not ask them to be leaders. We did not force them to be leaders. And nobody in the world forces you to be a leader. You always have the chance to say, no, I don't want this. I want to sit in my corner and I want to write, or I want to do whatever I want to do with my spreadsheet, but I don't want to talk to people. If you don't want to talk to people, you can't be a leader. But these people have decided to be leaders. So in that case, once you're there, then they get the same treatment like anyone else. I mean, honestly, if somebody is visually impaired, can't walk, has cerebral palsy, whatever else, there is empathy where if somebody says that, oh, I can't switch on my video today on the call because my back is hurting, absolutely fine, because that's done. There's no problem. But if somebody says, oh, I can't spell this, or I made a spelling mistake, even if there is severe cerebral palsy and she cannot write, she cannot speak, or she cannot walk, or she cannot write, she can spell. So there's no question of, there is really no going away from excellence, because I keep telling my team, and, even as of 2 days ago, I told them, I don't want the world, my husband and I, who, brought Maya Care where we are today. We don't want you to be in a place where people are just acknowledging you because you're disabled, because, oh, you're special and you've done something. No, that's not the point. You've overcome that and you're as good as any leader in the world to do what you need to do. Because how does it matter to anyone else when you're working on Zoom and Google Drive and all of that, and you're able to speak on the phone? How does it matter to anyone else that you can't walk? Leadership is not about walking. At least in the areas we work in, it's not about walking. So that is not anyone's business. So coming back to empathy, it's again having the confidence to understand the motivations, understand what the team wants, what really is the problem. And I find it very easy once I understand what the problem is. Till the time I don't understand what the problem is, I'm as much in the dark as anyone else. So if anybody tries to fool me and say, oh, this happened because of my disability, say no. Anyway, because we never ask anyone to do things they can't do. Somebody who cannot hear, she works as my PA and she's the one sending out calendar requests and all of that. She's never asked to make a call. There's somebody who's visually impaired who works with her to make the call. So this is, these are little ways we worked around, but the main thing, the empathy for someone saying, I want to do better, that doesn't go away. And the secret really is to care. If you care, it's exactly like your own children, your own family, your own friends, because you care about them, you have no problem communicating with them. But if you're so distant, and if it's really, a work equation that I don't want to see you, I'm not interested in you after 5 p.m., then that's never going to work, at least in this kind of.
Right. I absolutely love your answer. You educated me in the fact of just in general, people with disabilities. You're absolutely right. It's about excellence and about treating them with the same respect as anybody else and the same expectation. I love that you hold your team to the same expectations as everybody else, because and the second thing that I loved about that is that they self-appointed themselves as leaders. I think in order for you to be able to want to advance in your career, you do have to have that self-appointed motivation and draw it out of you so that you can do different things, get out of your comfort zone, and then eventually, move up the ladder and maybe even lead other people. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Manjiri. So the last thing I'm going to ask you is, a lot of times I listen to podcasts and the conversation is great, but I wish I kind of walked away with some actionable things that I could do. So could you provide us with maybe 2 different actionable things that our listeners can do so that they can apply in their careers?
Yes, the first one is really understand what you really want in your life. What is it that makes you happy? Don't try to be anyone else. So understand, and I'll give my own example. I understood about 10 years ago that what makes me truly, truly happy is seeing other people succeed, other leaders especially succeed. And if I hadn't understood that about myself, I would have continued to be in roles or do things, but I'm not able to influence other people. So the first thing is to know yourself before you try to lead anyone else. And the second thing is really, what I said at the beginning of today's session is that decide who to lead, who deserves to be led by you. Once you decide who deserves to be led, everything else will go right. So don't spend your time, energy on the wrong people who don't want to be led. And, this will work for everyone else.
Well, I love those two things, Manjiri. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope that all the listeners got really good ideas on what to do. By all means, get the book, Bosses of the Wild. And all of Manjiri's information is going to be in my blog post along with her books. So you can make sure that you are able to get in contact with her as well. So with that, Manjiri, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today. And for everybody else, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action. Thank you, Manjiri.
Thank you, Rosie. Wonderful talking to you. Thank you.
I had a really good time talking to Manjiri, especially about her Bosses of the Wild book, where she compares different leadership personalities to animal personalities. I thought that was really clever. And now I'm going to recap the 2 tips that Manjiri provided us. The first one is understand who you really are. Figure out what makes you happy. You're not really going to be able to lead others well until you figure out what makes you happy. Tip number 2, decide who deserves to be led by you. Don't waste your time or energy on people that don't want to be led. I thought those were 2 really clever tips for managers. If you have any other suggestions or topics on what we can do on this podcast show, by all means, please send me an email or contact me on LinkedIn. All of my contact information is on my blog as well as Manjiri's. You can find us on nowomanleftbehind.com. So with that, that is a wrap for today's show. Remember to be brave, be bold, and take action. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.